The night sky above Velara 9 looked strange and heavy, filled with dark clouds that glowed faintly violet from the lightning storms far away. When Ethan Cole's small Terran scout ship broke through the clouds, his sensors failed one after another. The planet's energy field was wild, unpredictable, and every reading came back scrambled. He had been sent only to recover a lost probe, a simple mission, until the storm hit. The ship shook hard as lightning ripped across the hull, and within seconds systems went down. Ethan pulled hard on the manual controls, fighting to keep the craft steady, but it was no use. The ship dove through the clouds and crashed into the side of a cliff with a sound that echoed through the empty canyons. Hours later, smoke drifted up from the wreckage. Ethan woke in pain, his helmet cracked and suit torn, but he was alive. His leg hurt but not broken. The air was thin but breathable. He looked around and saw ruins scattered across the valley floor below, a fallen city buried in gray dust. Massive towers leaned sideways, half buried, and strange writing glowed faintly on broken walls. It looked ancient and dead, like something from another time. He activated his wrist beacon to send a distress signal, but the signal vanished into static. He was alone. He gathered supplies from the wreck, an energy rifle, food rations, and a small survival pack. His mission still mattered. The probe had fallen somewhere near these ruins, and Command would expect him to recover it. But as he started walking, he felt a strange vibration under the ground, like the city itself was alive. The deeper he went, the thicker the mist became until it turned into a glowing fog. The silence was deep. No wind, no sound of insects or machines, only the slow hum of something ancient beneath the earth. He climbed over fallen stones until he reached what looked like a broken plaza. That was when he heard it, a faint sound, soft and trembling. It wasn't the wind. It was a voice, small and scared. Ethan froze, then moved toward the sound, stepping carefully between columns that had fallen long ago. The voice grew louder, a child's cry. He found a small figure crouched in the corner of a cracked building, hiding behind debris. She looked no older than 6 or 7. Her skin was pale silver that shimmered faintly in the dark, and her hair glowed like faint moonlight. She had no shoes, no coat, and her face was streaked with tears. Ethan slowly knelt down, keeping his voice calm. "Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." The child looked at him with wide, glowing eyes, afraid but curious. She spoke something he couldn't understand, her voice high and shaking. Ethan pulled off his survival cloak and gently wrapped it around her small frame. "You're freezing," he said softly. "You'll be all right." He gave her water and one of his ration bars. She looked at it uncertainly, then took a tiny bite. He smiled a little. "See? Not poison." Suddenly, his wrist scanner beeped fast. Movement nearby. Many signals approaching fast. He turned and saw lights moving through the fog, bright red and sharp. The air filled with an electric hum as flying machines glided down. Hunters. They weren't human. The machines opened, and tall, armored beings stepped out, their armor black and ridged with spikes. Their eyes burned yellow through narrow helmets. They spoke in harsh voices, scanning the area. One of them pointed toward the child. Ethan didn't need to know the language to understand. They were after her. He grabbed her hand. "Stay behind me." She clung to his arm as he pulled her into the ruins. The first energy bolt hit the wall near them, sending dust and heat into the air. Ethan ran through the rubble, ducking between fallen pillars, firing his rifle to slow them down. His shot struck one of the hunters, sending it spinning backward, but there were more. Too many. He threw a smoke grenade to block their view and used the chaos to dive into an underground passage. The girl stumbled, but he caught her and kept moving. The tunnels twisted and shook as explosions followed behind them. Ethan's breath came hard. His heart pounded. He had no idea where the tunnels led, but he couldn't stop. The child whispered something again, pointing down one corridor. He trusted her and followed. The air grew colder as they went deeper. The sound of pursuit faded behind them. Finally, they came to a wide chamber with a black lake in the center. Its surface shone like glass, reflecting the strange purple light from the ceiling. Ethan collapsed to his knees, exhausted. He checked the child. She was trembling, but alive. He tore open a first aid patch and covered the small wound on her arm. "Who are they?" he asked quietly, knowing she couldn't answer. She just looked at him with sad eyes and said a single word in her language that sounded like mother. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, we'll find her. I promise." The air shifted suddenly. The mist above the lake began to move, twisting into spirals. Ethan lifted his rifle, tense. A deep hum filled the room as something large emerged from the shadows on the other side of the lake. A figure stepped forward, tall, armored in black and silver with wings that shimmered faintly like glass catching starlight. The figure's face was hidden beneath a hood, but the air around her pulsed with power. The child gasped and ran toward her, calling out in joy. Ethan stood frozen as the tall figure knelt, wrapping the child in her arms. Then she looked up at him. Her hood fell back, revealing a face that was beautiful but otherworldly, skin pale as moonlight, eyes glowing red and long dark hair that flowed like liquid night. For a moment, Ethan forgot to breathe. She looked both regal and dangerous, like a creature carved from the stars themselves. When she spoke, her voice was deep and calm, carrying weight beyond words. "You saved my daughter." Ethan lowered his weapon slowly. "Anyone would have," he said, his voice rough. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. Her gaze lingered on the burns across his arm and the torn fabric of his suit. Then she stepped closer and placed a hand on his chest. Her touch was cool but alive with strange warmth. "No one else would have crossed the dead ruins for a child not of their kind," she said softly. He swayed on his feet. The adrenaline was fading, and exhaustion took over. "I just did what I had to." His vision blurred. "She's safe now. That's what matters." The Queen's eyes softened for the briefest moment. The child hugged her leg, looking up at Ethan with a small smile. Then his knees gave out and he collapsed. The last thing he saw was the Queen kneeling beside him, her hand resting lightly on his face. Her voice followed him into darkness. "Rest, human. You are safe now." When he woke, he was surrounded by warmth and soft light. He tried to move but felt strange energy flowing through his veins. His wounds were gone. For the first time since the crash, he felt no pain, only peace. Through the glass walls of his chamber, he saw the same child sleeping nearby, watched over by shadowed figures. And beyond them stood the Queen, her eyes fixed on him as if she had been waiting. Ethan did not yet know that by saving one life on this lonely world, he had changed the fate of an empire that had forgotten mercy. Ethan woke to the sound of soft music, a slow echo that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The chamber around him was not human. Its walls were made of crystal that glowed faintly from within, pulsing in rhythm with the sound. The air was cool and smelled faintly of metal and flowers. His injuries were gone, his wounds sealed without scars. He sat up slowly, confused. He remembered the crash, the child, the hunters, and the tall woman with red eyes who had come through the mist. She had called him something, a word that sounded like honor or savior, but he hadn't understood. The door opened without a sound. A tall figure entered, carrying a small tray of fruit and glowing water. Her face was covered by a smooth silver mask, and her voice was calm. "You must rest, human. The Queen will see you soon." Ethan nodded quietly, too tired to argue. He drank the water. It tasted strange, like cold lightning and honey. His strength returned almost at once. Hours passed before the door opened again. The woman who entered needed no introduction. She carried herself like someone who had ruled for centuries. Her armor gleamed black and silver, her cloak flowing behind her like living shadow. Her eyes still glowed faintly red, but her expression was calm and thoughtful. Ethan rose quickly, unsure what to do, but she lifted her hand. "Be at ease, human. You are under my protection." She stepped closer, studying him as though trying to read his heart. "You saved my child," she said softly. "Few among your kind would have done that." Ethan scratched the back of his neck, feeling awkward. "I didn't really think about it. I just saw someone in danger." The Queen smiled faintly. "That is exactly why it matters." She looked toward the sleeping child nearby. "Her name is Sari. She is my only heir. The Vorthe sought to destroy her line, and they nearly succeeded until you came." Ethan felt the weight of her words but didn't know how to reply. He looked down at the floor, then back at her. "I'm glad she's safe. But if those things come back, you might not be. They'll come for you too, won't they?" The Queen's eyes darkened as though a memory had touched her. "They already have. For thousands of years, our two races have fought in shadow and silence. My people once ruled 12 systems, but now we are few. Our enemies believe our bloodline must end before we can rise again." "You changed that," Ethan frowned. "I didn't mean to start a war." She gave a quiet laugh, soft and sad. "You may have ended one instead." Days turned into weeks. Ethan recovered fully, though he was restless. He explored the underground city, guided by the masked servants who watched him with silent curiosity. He saw vast halls filled with strange machines that looked alive, pulsing with blue light. He saw the Nightborn warriors training in silence, their blades humming with energy. And everywhere he went, whispers followed him. The human who saved the princess, the stranger who walked with the queen's favor. But not all welcomed him. One evening, as he walked along a long corridor of mirrors, 2 armored guards blocked his path. Their faces were cold. "You do not belong here, Terran," one said. "The queen's mercy blinds her. Leave before the dawn." Ethan stood his ground. "I'm not here to take anything from you." "I just want to go home," the guard sneered. "Then you should never have touched royal blood." They moved forward, but before they could act, a quiet voice filled the corridor. "Enough!" The queen appeared, her gaze sharp. The guards immediately dropped to one knee. She looked at Ethan. "Come with me." He followed her through winding passages until they reached a balcony overlooking the vast glowing lake below the city. From here he could see the broken towers of the world above through the mist. "You defended yourself," she said finally. "My people fear what they do not understand. But they will learn. You are not our enemy." Ethan looked at her, trying to understand her calm tone. "Why are you telling me this?" She turned to face him fully. "Because you will face more than words soon." That night the attack came. A group of rebels within her court, old lords who believed the queen's compassion was weakness, struck while the guards slept. They came silently, moving through the halls with weapons made from starlight metal. Their goal was clear: to end the queen's life and claim her throne before her child could rise. Ethan was awake when the alarm sounded. He grabbed his rifle and ran toward the sound of battle. Flames lit the crystal halls as energy bolts struck the walls. He saw the queen fighting, her wings spread, her blade shining red with light. Her movements were beautiful and deadly, but there were too many attackers. One of them aimed at her from behind. Without thinking, Ethan threw himself in the way. The blast hit his shoulder, burning deep, but he didn't stop. He charged forward, tackling the attacker to the ground and slamming the rifle into its chest until the armor cracked. The rebels fled when the queen unleashed a wave of dark energy that shook the air. The palace went silent again except for the sound of distant alarms. Ethan leaned against a pillar, breathing hard. The queen approached him quickly, her voice filled with concern. "You are hurt," he shook his head. "Just a burn. I'll live." She looked at the wound and raised her hand. Light spread from her fingertips, cool and soft. The pain faded instantly. He stared at her in disbelief. "That's impossible," she smiled faintly. "Nothing is impossible when one believes in life more than death." After the attack, the palace grew quiet again, but the queen's people began to look at Ethan differently. The guards who once whispered now nodded in respect. The servants bowed lower. The child, Princess Sari, followed him everywhere, laughing and asking questions in a mix of broken words from both their languages. The queen often watched them with a strange expression, half sorrow, half wonder. A week later, under the glow of the eternal night sky, she asked Ethan to walk with her to the high terrace. From there, he could see the horizon where the planet's faint sun cast purple light across the ruins. She stood beside him silently for a long time before speaking. "In our law," she said quietly, "the one who saves royal blood must be rewarded beyond measure. We give them gold, worlds, or power, but you have asked for none of those things." Ethan looked at her with a tired smile. "I didn't do it for a reward. I just couldn't let a kid die." The queen turned toward him, her cloak moving like shadow. "That is why you deserve something greater. You changed our destiny, Ethan Cole. You reminded us that compassion still lives among the stars." He frowned slightly, not understanding. "What are you saying?" Her eyes glowed brighter. "I am offering you the oldest vow of my people, the union of hearts. Marriage not for politics or power, but for truth. You would stand beside me as equal, not servant." Ethan stared at her, speechless. "You're serious?" "I am," she said softly. "Through you, humanity and the Nightborn can finally learn to trust. Through us, both our kinds may survive." He looked at the sky, thinking of the long distance between his world and hers, of the war-torn galaxies that separated them. Then he looked back at her and saw not an alien queen, but a being who had suffered and still chosen mercy. Slowly he nodded. "All right, if it means peace, then yes." The queen stepped closer, her eyes shining like twin stars. "Then let the stars bear witness," she said. She extended her hand. He took it. For a moment, the light around them changed, wrapping them in silver glow. The air felt alive, filled with warmth and calm. Far above, across the galaxy, sensors on human ships picked up a strange energy burst from Velara 9. Command would later call it a resonance event, but those who knew the story would say it was something else, the birth of a new alliance, forged by courage and kindness. In the years that followed, Ethan Cole's name became legend. The human who saved the alien princess, who married the Queen of Night, who ended a 1,000-year war without a single demand. He was remembered not as a soldier or conqueror, but as the man who taught the children of darkness how to hope again. And on Velara 9, under the eternal twilight, Queen Lysara often stood beside her husband, watching the stars. When their daughter ran laughing through the crystal halls, her voice echoing with joy, the queen would smile and whisper softly. It began with one man who refused to walk away.